In John Milton's Paradise Lost, Satan tells Beelzebub that it's better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. And modern-day billionaires have generally been okay with this trade-off, making our world a measurably worse place while reaping the benefits for themselves. But reigning in hell isn't enough for Peter Thiel, the billionaire co-founder of data and analytics platform Palantir. His intention is to defeat the Antichrist. And the way he's going to do it? Well, that involves birth rates. My name is Josh Borman.
I'm June Sternbach.
And this is Ill-Conceived, a podcast about natalism. God, we are so fucking back. And I am so back on my bullshit.
What's your bullshit? I mean, you have a lot of bullshit. There's all sorts of bullshit. You're always on, like, you know, you love going to the theater. You're a theater kid. But
yes.
What bullshit are you on?
Reading the news and wanting to die.
You know, I do know that New York has a bit of controversy right now. You've been in the news.
That's true.
Lately. Zohran Mamdani, it's a big deal. He wanted a bidet.
Yes.
I think I have to retract my support. It's a little bourgeoisie for me. That's a little, to have a non-stinky ass. That's like, I don't know, man.
Thank you for mentioning this, June. This was exactly the news that I was thinking of when I said that.
I know.
I am just apoplectic with rage that he dare do that. And simultaneously, giving us universal child care? I don't think so, bud. I'm going to pay for that shit like a real American.
No handouts.
That's right.
And no clean asshole.
No, I want my whole dirty and my children expensive.
That's the New York we've come to expect.
That's right.
But beautiful. Everything's beautiful.
Everything's beautiful.
Everyone's normal. Things are fine.
And I prepped a very fun episode for you today about a very cool, very normal man who is in no way, shape, or form terrifying, a man known as Peter Thiel. But before we get to him, I feel like we should just address a little bit of opening business, a little bit of housekeeping.
Absolutely.
First big thing, we are amazingly now managing to do a release schedule that is sustainable, that doesn't kill us.
You know, we did that at first, but it was slowly draining our life force in a positive way. I would never complain too much about learning about some of the worst people and organizations, but it was becoming a little unsustainable, sadly.
Yeah. And we're now settled in. Every Friday, you can expect new episodes. And that means that in another 2 weeks, you're going to have the next main feed episode, which June is going to be preparing. And next week will be a new Patreon episode. That's right, folks, the Ill-Conceived Patreon. We've managed now to upload all of the episodes, including the main feed episodes, to the Patreon. So it is now your one-stop shop if you want all of the stuff that we do. It's available there.
Sorry, I just want to say I love the name of it. The logo for the feed is beautiful, but also the name. It's the Blessed Feed. I think, is that what it's called? The Blessed Feed. It's beautiful.
Ill-Conceived, the Blessed Feed. That's really important because, you know, I think that if you're paying a little extra money to get access to our premium product, you ought to feel premium. So if you want that fancy logo, if you want the fancy sort of sun-blasted version of the logo, the holy version of the logo, and you want to just be able to access all of our episodes in one feed, both of those things will be available to you when you go to patreon.com/illconceived and join us as a standard baby. Or if you're really feeling frisky and you have $999 to throw around.
Maybe Peter Thiel? Possibly,
Peter, you listen to this, bud? You can be our first and contractually only chonky baby for the low price of $999 a month. But yeah, I'm very excited about this. I feel like we finally sort of have something that is very clear and very cohesive. And the last thing that I wanted to note about the Patreon feed is just to really clarify what you are getting with those extra episodes. We are changing the name of them to the B-sides because we realize, like, yes, we are reading mail. Yes, we are chilling, but it's also an opportunity for us to sort of bring in other thematic information and just any notes that we might have had, things that we like maybe forgot about or weren't able to get to in the main episode. Again, none of this is taking away from those main feed episodes. It's just a little extra if that's the kind of thing that you want.
You know how you feel when you go to church, which both of you and I do.
Yeah.
And the pastor starts going around and he's like, you know what? It's time to bring out those wallets. It's time to tithe. You feel blessed when you do that.
I'll tell you this too. When the priest slaps that wafer on my tongue, that's what I call a blessed feed.
And that's what you could feel if you join us on Patreon. You get a little bit extra on one of the more recent episodes. Like Josh said, it is, mailbag. We read some articles that are very relevant to the show, but we also we have moments where we sort of have like crazy realizations. Like we took a look at the Trump accounts, the like investment accounts.
Yes,
that Trump is apparently doing, and I guess it's happening. It is a thing now, technically. And we had some like crazy realizations. We sort of dug through it all, and I felt like I was losing my fucking mind. I was like, all of this, I don't know, all of this always comes together in a way I never expect. So if you want some of that sort of stuff, some of those just more freeform conversations, you can join us on there.
Because again, the main show is, I edit it pretty heavily and exhaustively so that it flows very nicely and smoothly. The flip side to that, of course, with those B-sides not really being edited, is that you can hear us having horrifying revelations in real time.
And I quite love it. I really enjoy it.
So yeah, check out the Patreon, please, if you have not done so already. Obviously, whether or not you subscribe to the Patreon, you're still one of our beloved babies, and we do appreciate you for it.
And I just want to reiterate, you will still get the full main feed. You will not miss any of what the show you've come to love and enjoy, or hopefully love so far on this main feed.
The pink episodes are and always will remain free. It's the green ones that'll cost you.
Just a little bonus.
And last thing before we open up the world famous mailbag is we should just mention we've gone on some other shows recently.
Busy week.
I went on Have You Seen This, which is a podcast about like bizarre or overlooked media. We watched a movie called Catch My Soul, which is this very strange musical adaptation of Shakespeare's Othello, where they're all in New Mexico in the desert, and Othello is a like evangelical preacher. There's a lot of it that straight up does not work, but it's still nevertheless really interesting. I went on with my co-host Brian from The Worst of All Possible Worlds, and we had a great time. So I'd recommend going and checking that out. I also went on a show called Reserved Recommendations, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You go on to talk about media that maybe you don't full-throatedly recommend, but is still interesting to talk about. Ooh. And I talked about the Australian evangelical Christian band Newsboys. I know, given our audience, that at least a few people are like, oh, fuck, I haven't thought about the Newsboys in 20 years. And if that's you, go check out that episode. I had a lot of fun.
I also went on a podcast recently. I went on A Bit Fruity with Matt Bernstein, and it was a really interesting one. I got to talk to Ashley St. Clair. You might be familiar with her as someone who had Elon Musk's, one of his like 1,000 babies.
Yeah, we talked about her on this show when we did the Elon Musk episode.
Because that was like, at least as of that point, he could possibly have more now, but that was like the most recent person he had children with. For context, for people that don't know why I could have possibly ended up talking to her on the show, or why she would be even open to that, she's recently, in the wake of being the target of Elon Musk, sort of had a change of heart. She's taken a step back, looked at where she ended up, because she was like in the right-wing media sphere. She was like on Fox News. She was involved with TPUSA. And she's said this publicly, that she wants to live in a kinder world than the one that she was like kind of building at first. That episode of A Bit Fruity should be out today when this episode airs. So if you want to see a conversation about us, Matt and I, talking to her about like her past and sort of grilling her on that and having her reflect on a lot of the like transphobic and hurtful things that she did, and that was, really bad stuff. Please take a listen to that. I think it was a really interesting conversation, especially in like a maybe possibly moving away from Trumpism world. So yeah, check that out if that sounds interesting to you.
I'm really looking forward to that episode. Basically, what I will do is I will put a link in the episode notes to all of the podcasts that I just mentioned, and including the one that June was talking about, if it is out. If it's not out at the time that I publish this episode, I'll just put a link to the podcast itself, and then I'll go back in a little later and update it with a link directly to the episode once it is released. And I guess the only other thing I'll say is, hey, if you're out there and you have a podcast that has some listeners and you'd like me to come on it, I am doing something that I call the Podcast Challenge. 52 guest appearances in 52 weeks. That's what I'm trying to do. So
you're a fucking maniac, dude. You're fucking crazy for that. Like, I know you're going to do it. I'm
doing it for the love of the game.
And I know without a doubt, I would never bet against you going on and guesting on 52 podcasts. That's a loser's bet. But just the fact that, like, that's something I know that's within your possibility, that's within your power is crazy to me. And you know, it inspires me to do a little bit more, guts on a little bit more. So if anyone wants me to go on their show also, let me know. I can't promise I'll do 52 fucking shows like Josh over here, but I can promise that maybe I'll try to organize something and find some time to go on your show.
Yeah, I mean, either way, you know how to get a hold of us, illconceivedpod@gmail.com. Whether you're doing a show that you think we'd be a good fit for, or maybe you know somebody who does. We'd love to hear from you, so please get in touch.
All right, I'm putting the broom away. That was a lot of housekeeping. We dusted up.
We did.
It's fucking pristine,
but you know what?
Right now. Holy shit.
That was a damn clean sweep. And what's this? What's this that I've just unearthed by brushing away all of that dust? Well, it's the world famous mailbag.
Oh my God.
And this one is titled, Thanks, and a note about peer-reviewed research access. And this is from Sen, who says, hello, June and Josh. So that's a dub for June this week. I just wanted to write and thank you for the interesting and also challenging work you've put into the podcast. I've enjoyed your prior podcasts a lot and was thrilled when you started this one, as it's very pertinent to me personally. I was raised in a Christian home and also homeschooled, which, looking back on things, was a bit of a double whammy for young me as I made my foray into the adult world later on. That being said, my parents did their best to make sure that me and my siblings got a fairly balanced and anti-bigoted worldview. It was very elucidating listening to your homeschooling episode and has given me a better understanding of some of the reactions I have received over the years. Currently, I'm in training to switch careers and become a librarian. In your episode about eugenics, IQ and the bell curve, you mentioned that it can be difficult to get around paywalls for peer-reviewed articles. This is true, but I also want to recommend to listeners who may be struggling with those to check their local public library. Often, they offer access to a number of academic databases via your library card, and it can be very helpful for continuing self-driven education. Thanks again for both the laughs and the learning. Take care, Sen.
Thank you so much for that email. And that reminds me, Josh, have I ever told you about my public library card story?
No.
People will always have that stereotypical story of, oh, my dog ate my fucking homework. That's why I didn't do it. Whatever. That's the most stereotypical lie a student could ever give about not doing their homework. I was reading a book once. I had just gotten a public library card, and I was like, wow, I'm going to go check out the public library. It's really cool. I can't believe I've never done this before. And I was using my card as a bookmark because I checked out a book and that's all I had on hand. And I put it, I was hanging out at someone's house. I was hanging out with a friend, and I put my card on the windowsill, and their family had 2 big dogs. Uh-oh. But I was like, it's laminated. This is a nice little card. Surely it'll be fine. But one of the fucking dogs literally tore it to shreds. Like, it was fucking destroyed. A fucking dog ate my library card, and I swear to God, it absolutely happened.
What I'm actually wondering about then is, like, when you went to the library to replace the card, did they ask you where it went?
No, I was too embarrassed. I never got a new one for that library.
What?
I know. No. I was too embarrassed. I never went back to that library.
The prospect of having to look in the librarian's eyes and being like, yeah, my dog, not even my dog, somebody else's dog ate my library card.
Yeah, it was really bad. So I just didn't do it. It was like a little bit before I moved out of my hometown. So it was like, it wasn't like a huge loss, but I was like, oh God, I'm just going to wait. I'm just not going to go here again. I'll get a new card in Chicago.
Well,
which I did.
Also, Chicago Public Library, great fucking library.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll also say the reason that I wanted to include this letter specifically is that I have done this. I'm a member of the New York Public Library, and that is how I get my access to JSTOR, JSTOR. It's a database that allows access to a whole lot of peer-reviewed research. It would be really nice if, someday I was able to, I don't know, maybe be affiliated with a university or something like that. But until then, I will say that the combination of just the open web and the databases that I'm able to access through NYPL, pretty good.
Honestly, not bad. Especially also shout out to archive.is/ on articles. I have saved a lot of money on not having to buy subscriptions by just using that. That's also been really good for research if you're not going the academic route, but more so going towards the having to read Vox for some reason and don't want to give them money.
Obviously, it goes without saying, if there is a high quality publication that is doing good work, please do pay for a subscription to support them.
Absolutely.
But every once in a while, there might be something that is behind a paywall. Maybe it's something that you would rather not pay for. Maybe it's like, I don't know, The Atlantic or something.
Yeah, no, oh my God. Or Washington Post, Jesus Christ.
Right.
Yeah. Never, don't. I don't think it's controversial to say never give money to Washington Post.
I'd rather not.
Yeah. No, give to local journalism is what I've shifted to doing.
Absolutely.
I give money to, in Chicago specifically, Unraveled, Block Club, but no, support local journalism.
Yeah, if you're in New York like me, Hellgate, Gothamist, The City NYC, all good resources. Or wherever you are. There's somebody out there doing something cool. Go find them. Go support them.
Absolutely.
Well, it's time for the main course, June. Are you ready?
Oh, God. I love talking about Peter Thiel. I'm fascinated by Elon Musk. I'm fascinated by a lot of these people. But Peter Thiel is one of those figures in the world right now where it's like he is the prime evil, in my opinion. Yeah. He is like sort of like Donald Trump evil, Elon Musk evil. But Peter Thiel, I feel like for me, explains so much of why we're at where we're at politically, culturally. In a way that I feel like I'm like an evangelist for talking about how evil he is. I just want everyone to know how evil this guy is.
Well, and something that I wanted to say right up top is that I think that he enjoys a reputation as being like the big bad, right? I think that there are a lot of liberals and socialists who are maybe afraid of him is the wrong word, but see him pulling all of the strings everywhere. And that's not to say that he doesn't command a great deal of influence and capital. He absolutely does. And we're going to be talking today about exactly what that looks like. But I think there's also a tendency to make him seem bigger, scarier, and more competent than he actually is.
Okay.
Because when it comes down to it, this guy isn't really all that bright. It just, he just has this reputation. And I think in much the same way that when we did that episode about Balaji Srinivasan a few weeks ago, or months ago at this point, I guess, we sort of discovered that there's not a whole lot there. I was a little bit taken aback at how much that was also the case with Peter Thiel. So,
no, that's sort of the thing is, I'm sure you've watched, in preparation for this episode, Peter Thiel talk a lot.
I'm afraid I have.
And the thing that I noticed almost immediately when watching him speak is that he's boring and also really fucking stupid.
He's so bad at talking.
Yeah, like not only is he like I think he's intellectually bankrupt, but I think he is like, he doesn't speak well. No. Like he does not know how to speak. It fascinates me when people have this much political sway and monetary capital and backing and like connections, but it seems like it's their first day out of the test tube talking for the first time, right? Like, yeah, but I mean, I can never, he's like dripping wet. He is, he's always wet. And he's like, he cannot get a thought out in under 3 minutes. It's crazy.
I'm going to do my best to get a number of thoughts out over the course of fewer than 3 minutes apiece. We'll see if I succeed or not, because honestly, there's so much to talk about with this guy. Yeah. And what I'll say as we jump into this is that invariably, we are going to fail to cover something about this guy that you want us to cover. Do not hesitate to let us know what that thing is. It also doesn't mean that I don't know about it or haven't looked into it. It's just that I kind of had to condense the scope of this down a little bit, because the more you start digging, the more different directions you could go in. My focus today is going to be to talk specifically about his ideology and how he acquired it, and then how that is sort of reflected in the Natalist Project. Because he is somebody who is very concerned about birth rates, and he is doing quite a bit for that cause.
You had me read a piece in preparation for this. I know we'll get to it later, but reading about the actual philosophical backing of his ideology was genuinely some of the most interesting prep that I've done for this show up until this point. Like, his background is fascinating in an anthropological way, like as a studying his mind way. Yeah,
well, let's talk a little bit about that background. Peter Thiel, born in Frankfurt, Germany, in the year 1967.
Odd vibes right off the bat. There's two types of people born in and then eventually move to the United States. It's like military family, where it's like, okay, at that time there's a lot of those people. Like, my dad was born not technically in America, but he was born in a military base. That's a common story. Everyone has that. Or it's someone like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, where they were just born there, and then they are an evil family that moved to all sorts of other evil places.
And exactly, like the Thiel situation is much more analogous to Elon Musk, because his dad was a German prospector, basically, like not gold prospector, but like his job was in mining. He was going around different places, finding which areas would be best for natural resource extraction. So this guy's name is Klaus. His dad, Klaus Friedrich Thiel.
That's a very, like, there's some implications there. I feel like just Germans from this time, maybe this is unfair for like the late 60s, 70s, the Nazis were gone, but just like a colonialist, imperialist minor family with that name gives off bad vibes right away.
Well, and it's going to start getting worse. The vibes are going to continue to deteriorate because when Peter is only 1 year old, right, 1968, the family moves to Cleveland.
If we didn't already know that they were a family of Nazis, that should be the first tell, frankly. Oh, God.
But then they pretty promptly turn around and move to Swakopmund. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that is basically a Nazi town in apartheid Southwest Africa.
Oh, yeah.
Which at that time was still sort of in a transitional period between being under German governance to being what would eventually become the independent state of Namibia.
My God. I don't know this for sure, but I feel like this was like, transition of government. Maybe there is a way for us to get in the ground floor, get some mines, get some like cheap labor, collect that capital as quickly as possible in this sort of like changing tides.
I think that's a piece of it. And it also, specifically being in this city, also means that they don't really have to be accountable to any government other than the local government there, which again existed along apartheid lines and was a place where there were just a lot of open Nazis. There's some interesting articles about it. There's one that I read from the New York Times that kicks off with a description of like a guy at a gas station just going, "Heil Hitler." Like it was that kind of place.
Oh my God. And I mean, but when they moved there, this was solidly in the middle of apartheid too. Like apartheid was still going strong.
Yeah. This is 1971. And it was a period of transition at that point, right? Where it was actually under the governance of South Africa for a while. And under full control of South Africa, literally a part of it, up until 1973. And again, they moved there in 71, so this was during that transition of power. And then eventually, Namibia gained full independence from South Africa in 1990. And that, of course, was right before the end of apartheid in South Africa itself.
Do you think Elon Musk and Peter Thiel yucked it up down in South Africa together? They got like ice cream cones together as kids. They're like, one day we'll rule the world. Do you think that happened?
I don't know if that happened, but I do think that them having a similar experience of upbringing with both of their fathers being miners and both of them having experience in those colonies, I absolutely think that bonded them closely to each other. And we're going to talk a bit more about the relationship between Thiel and Musk in a little bit. So again, the Thiels are in Southwest Africa from 1971. They moved back to California in 1977. So at this point, Peter Thiel is 10 years old. He bounces around between schools for a while, ends up going to San Mateo High School, and he's valedictorian. He is so good at the school that he's valedictorian of his graduating class. From there, he goes on to Stanford. He gets his major in philosophy there, and then he continues his education to get his JD. So he wants to be a lawyer. He's very much on the law track.
Interesting. Okay.
And one of the things that he does during his time at Stanford is he founds a journal. It's called the Stanford Review, and it is a conservative rag, basically. It's basically him trying to do his own little version of the National Review at Stanford.
He's a very, very ambitious child. Or I guess he was in college at this point, so he's very ambitious.
When you're on this track, the Stanford law track, you are expecting that you're going to go on and be a mover and shaker in the world of law, right?
Yeah, I mean, he clearly had set his sights very high for himself. Yeah.
And he was also the president of Stanford's chapter of the Federalist Society. You know about the Federalist Society, right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, they've written a lot of like conservative, Republican conservative in the United States law. They're sort of like the underpinning of a lot of like the strategy when it comes to the courts systems. Yeah.
But it's also that they identify young talent at law schools, top tier law schools around the country, and basically they groom them with the intention of having them eventually become high court justices, either on the state or federal level, up to and including the Supreme Court of the United States itself.
You know, we look at a lot of the Republican structures of today, and it's like, oh my God, they have like this really intricate network of organizations connected to different politicians, all organized like sort of nationally within different states across the United States. And it's like they've been doing this sort of system all across their politics for over 70 years at this point. It's sort of enlightening to see this.
And one thing that gives us sort of a preview of coming attractions in terms of Peter Thiel's whole thing is that he co-authors a book with David Sachs.
God, so I just looked this up. They probably went to college around the same time. They're roughly around the same age.
They were at Stanford together. Yes, that was how they met each other. Was at Stanford.
It's always the axis of evils. They all like know each other. They all met each other when they were like 20 years old. I can't imagine talking to David Sachs, 20-year-old David Sachs, and like 25-year-old Peter Thiel. At the Stanford Review. Jesus Christ.
So Dave and Pete are two pals here. They publish a book in 1995, and that book is entitled The Diversity Myth.
Oh, God.
It is exactly what you think it is.
Jesus Christ. I'm assuming it's like, I just because I grew up in apartheid South Africa, basically it's talking about like black people or like brown people, like Mexicans, immigrants. It's any sort of like scapegoat possible.
It's the shit that we talked about in our episode about IQ and the bell curve, right? Same fucking thing where it's like, well, more diversity doesn't necessarily make things better. And what's diversity anyway? Right?
Oh, God.
Fuck
he was
off.
on that shit early.
Yeah.
I mean, conservatives were always on that track, especially as we talked about early in the show, where like a lot of the like abortion panic among the far right and like religious right in particular was sort of born out of racism in a lot of ways. So like this was always a thing. But for people, I guess in my mind, when I think of Stanford Republicans in like maybe the 90s or 2000s, I think, they're maybe more secular, more like logical, more like this. But they're even engaging in that really early on.
Well, and with Thiel specifically too, he is not your standard issue, like secular small business Republican, right? He's a Christian freak. We're going to be talking a little bit later about his religious views, but that is one of the things that drives him is this idea of like religion and philosophy, because you have to also bear in mind that he, of course, was a philosophy major in his undergrad. The other thing that is important to note about Thiel on a personal level, and something that bumps up rather oddly against this like anti-woke thing, is that he's gay and was not openly gay at this time and would not be for a while. But that's just like, I think that's just something that is part of who he is that we need to note at this point.
It's super important to note. I'm not assuming you read that book because I don't think you need to, The Diversity Myth.
No, God, no.
Look, we do a lot to torture ourselves, but not that. But I would be curious to see if gay people? I'm assuming they are, but if they're mentioned in that book, I'm sure they are.
I don't know.
I would love to see how a book he authored talking about essentially himself, his own community. Well, maybe not community. He was not a part of a community.
Right. He wasn't out, so he couldn't be part of the community.
But he was still denigrating gay people, I assume, at this point.
I don't know. I mean, I will tell you what, I'll read a little bit of the book for the B-side. How does that sound?
Ooh, that sounds great if you want to.
I mean, for you, for me, it sounds very bad indeed, but I'm willing to do it for you, June, for you specifically.
Please. Oh, thank you. That's so sweet of you. Also, I was curious.
Yes.
I decided to go check out if the Stanford Review is still around, and of course it is.
It is. Okay.
And the front page biggest icon, the biggest article is an article about sex change surgery funding. So even the Stanford Review is sort of going in on this. Yeah,
exposing
this, like, sort of
Stanford's Wheeling Health Initiative from race-conscious hiring language to sex change surgery funding.
Yup. So like this is a pure rag. This is not what you would expect. Like, oh wow, a Stanford law student. Wow, this is going to be really intellectual and honest and it's going to be very that sort of deal. But it's not. It's a rag. It's the same sort of. It's indistinguishable from any fucking Twitter account, really. Yeah,
this is not to be confused with the Stanford Daily, which is their student newspaper, which is very, very good. Thiel graduates, right? He gets his JD.
Ooh, he should have failed.
Well, but then he does, right? He immediately enters his flop era. He goes and gets his associate placement, his junior associate placement at Sullivan and Cromwell, which is one of the really big law firms. And simultaneous to this, he applies for SCOTUS clerkships because, again, that's what you do, right? If you want to be on this track. This is a guy who I have to imagine at this point thought that one day he might sit on the federal bench or even the Supreme Court. And he applies for clerkships both with Justices Kennedy and Scalia.
Oh, God.
Both of his applications get rejected.
Yeah, no, this probably hit him pretty heavy. I mean, I can't imagine doing schooling for this long, dedicating so much of your life. I assume he had to be with, mid to late 20s at this point.
Right. And
in law school.
And it's Stanford, right? It's
that's a fucking shot in the heart.
Absolutely. Yeah. You were valedictorian of your high school, you got into fucking Stanford, and then you got into Stanford Law, which is and has been for a very long time one of the top 3 law schools in the country, right? Harvard, Yale, Stanford. Those 3 are the big 3 that, like, every year they'll flip and it'll be this year Stanford's number 1, right? Like, and thinking that you are going to be able to change the world through law and doing all the right things, right? Checking all the right boxes, being the fucking gifted and talented student who was on the right track. And then you're fucked, bud. And he actually didn't even do a full year at his associateship either.
Wow.
According to him, he was only there for like 7 months. And he just didn't have what it took to hack it.
He got his papers too wet. He was fucking dripping everywhere. They kicked him out.
And so he immediately pivots into finance. He goes and works in securities at Credit Suisse for a while. And then in 1996, he founds his first firm, which is called Thiel Capital Management. Worth noting, this is a different firm from Thiel Capital, which is his current, big firm. But that was in 1996. And subsequent to that, co-founds a company called Confinity with a couple guys named Max Levchin and Luke Nosek. This is in 1998. And their flagship product, which they develop over the course of the preceding year, is a little electronic payment system you might have heard of called PayPal.
God, yeah, no, this is the PayPal era, the PayPal mafia, if you will. I think that's sort of what everyone calls them, is sort of in my mind. And maybe, going back to what you said earlier, it's giving them too much credit. Maybe they like that. But I really do think that, PayPal is a good service, but it is sort of the source of a lot of the evil people that we know today, Brian Johnson, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, all of these people, people that we don't even probably know who are still in the background pulling strings in some different way, funding Donald Trump or who knows what the fuck, all sort of come from this early 2000s era. It's so weird that you can very clearly place this down as like one of the moments, just like how, 9/11 was the moment that a lot of this stuff shifted. PayPal forming in the way that it did and becoming as big as it did was another one of these moments, in my opinion.
Well, and so much of it, too, is that it was a scene, right? Like, so many times this happens where whether you're talking about like art or business, oftentimes the people who succeed are people who came up together and supported each other in that specific scene. And when you're talking about the PayPal Mafia, of course, one of the people who was notably in that scene was a man named Elon Musk, who was also working on an electronic payment processor called X.com.
Oh my, every single time I'm reminded that he has been obsessed with X.com and just the letter X for over 25 fucking years. It's a level of embarrassment that I don't think I feel for many other things. It's kind of beast mode, honestly, that he's this obsessed with a single letter.
This is also why he is so obsessed with making current day X.com, right? X the everything at Blaze Your Glory, into something that can send and receive payments, because it will finally allow him to complete the original vision of the original X.com, which again, he sold to PayPal. That was how he got his first big exit, but he lost control. And he has been wanting to sort of recapture that magic, that thing, that idea ever since.
It seems like at this point still he cares more about sending money across a platform than actually getting to space.
Yes.
It's kind of fucking Elon Musk. I mean, I could talk hours about Elon Musk and how
we have on this very show.
We literally have. I don't know if this is a verified story, but I think at the time, even like people like Peter Thiel, I've heard rumors that they were sort of like off-put by Elon Musk at the time.
Yeah,
and that's sort of why they got him out.
Imagine being too weird for Peter Thiel. That's crazy.
Yeah. And of course, I think there was probably a lot of bad blood at the time when Elon Musk lost control of his shares and was kicked out of PayPal.
Right.
But I feel like they've sort of made amends these days. I don't know how closely they associate still in the year of 2025, but I would assume they have conversations.
But you're right. That is an important point of the story, is that once X.com got acquired, Elon Musk, like, not only did he exit in the sense of like he was able to get a financial exit, he also got kicked the fuck out because nobody wanted him there anymore.
Yeah. And that's sort of why I think the rumor constantly circulates of like, not many people fucked with this guy, is that it was like, oh, they sort of kicked him out.
Hey, it's Editing Josh. Just a small point of clarification here. When X.com merged with Confinity to create the new PayPal, Elon Musk was originally appointed the CEO of that new entity. But then what ended up happening is, as we were alluding to, the other shareholders realized that Elon Musk was really, really bad at running a company. And so they basically performed a boardroom coup, removed Elon from his position as CEO, and installed somebody else instead. And that man's name? Peter Thiel.
Also, I'm curious, around this time, do we still know what Peter Thiel's dad was up to? Was he sort of in the mining business still?
I don't.
I don't think it's super important. I'm just curious if he's like active in Peter Thiel's life at all still, or sort of like helping him in any financial way. Because like, if not from the mining, from his father, where did he get the money to start up a capital firm?
Well, okay, so I don't know if some of it came from his family, but I have to imagine that it did. Like, I don't know how much money Thiel Capital Management, the one that he started up in 96, I don't know what his actual assets under management were for that. So I don't know what kind of money he was playing with. What I do know is that in 2004, eBay acquires PayPal. It was essentially becoming eBay's in-house payment service. And so
absolutely. And RuneScape's membership service. Don't you forget that one. That's very important.
Sorry.
Yeah. And I think Club Penguin, I also think, it was huge for the online gaming sphere too. Just so very important. I needed to throw those in. But
this was a very like natural deal. And this is where Thiel gets his first big exit, right? Because the total value of the PayPal deal was $1.5 billion.
Oh my God.
I don't know what Thiel's stake was at that time, but if we assume that it was even like 10%, that's 150 million. Or even 5%, that's 75 million. That's pretty good money.
That's a lot of fucking money. That's more money than the average person will ever even be able to conceive of it in their life.
Right.
That's fucking crazy. Yeah.
And so now Thiel's got walking around money, right? And he starts
he's doing pretty all right for himself.
He's doing okay.
That's just like some pocket change. Yeah.
And so he starts to spend. One of the investments that he makes is arguably the best investment that anybody has made in the history of money. $500,000 to a man known as Mark Zuckerberg for 10% of Facebook.
That's fucking... It's crazy how a lot of the circumstances of the wealthy people that are around today is just that they sort of made the correct call. They got 21 on blackjack at the right moment, and they fucking took it all.
So Facebook, or Meta Platforms rather, is currently worth $1.54 trillion. That is the total value of outstanding shares. If Thiel still owns 10%, and he probably doesn't. He's probably a bit down from that. But let's say he did. That's $150 billion.
No, that's like fake money level. He found the infinite money glitch. He can do anything he wants. He has ascended humanity. He has ascended capitalism. He has achieved capitalism too.
Yes. The other big thing that Thiel does in 2004, and this is investing some real fucking money, is he puts $30 million into a company that he co-founds called Palantir.
Ooh, now that's Facebook, social media, kind of evil. Some might say it's bad, some might say it's good, but Palantir, that's just sort of maybe one of the most evil companies around today, I think.
It's up there for sure. It's up there with fucking ExxonMobil.
Yeah. No, it's hard to conceive of it's hard to imagine other companies that are doing the things on this level.
Well, and just to give people a bit more of a concrete sense of what it is that Palantir does, because genuinely, I don't think anybody really knows what they do, but like we have a broad sense of what the thing is. Mm-hmm. Palantir is a software as a service platform, which means that you pay them a certain fee per month, per year, whatever. They give you access to their software tools and support in return. And their platform, what it does is it takes all of the data that you have access to and it centralizes it into one single source. And then what you're able to do with that data, of course, and using Palantir's tools, is you can visualize that information however you want, and you can predict future trends based on that data.
So it's sort of just like an Excel sheet that sort of can help predict different things just based off of any sort of range of data. Which, on the surface, I got to be honest, doesn't sound too bad.
No.
But then you find out it's like, oh, it's being implemented in different governments.
Exactly.
It's being implemented in the FBI. It's being implemented in Israel. It's being implemented with ICE in the United States. It's like, oh.
Let's talk about that, right? Because
Yeah,
Palantir itself does not collect or broker data. That is not what they do. And I think there's a lot of people who think that they do that. And now I don't know if maybe they facilitate the transfer of data between their clients. That, that's the sort of thing that I could theoretically see them doing, but that's just speculation, right? What we know that they definitely do is give their clients the ability to take these massive data sets and make them more legible. But the thing about their customers, right, is that these are not going to be like rinky-dink little customers who bring in an Excel sheet, right?
I can't just buy like access to Palantir. I can't just be like, I got frog calls that I want to organize a bit better. I want to find the best retention pond. I can't do that. What's even the point?
I have a list of 100 subscribers from patreon.com/illconceived. Yeah, no. The first major client that Palantir lands is a little org you might have heard of called the Central Intelligence Agency.
Oh, I've heard of that one. Yeah. No, I kind of know about that one a little bit.
And they are probably the primary consumer for Palantir's flagship product, which is called Gotham. Gotham is their product, which is used for intel or military applications. And again, it's like they're doing Minority Report shit with that.
Yeah.
They are aggressively tracking what could be happening where and predictively modeling things accordingly.
So I imagine companies like Lockheed Martin, or maybe not even, but militaries, like this has military implications, like U.S. military.
Yes, correct.
I don't know the exact list of all militaries in the world that use Palantir, but I know it is a substantial amount. It's not just the United States. It's not just Israel. There's like a handful.
But I also know that the U.S. and Israel are kind of the two big ones in terms of the ones who are most using Gotham.
It's very at the center of the empire. Absolutely.
Right. But Lockheed, actually, that's an example of a customer who would use their other product, which is called Foundry. And that's the product that's tailored for civil use. So like, let's say that I'm the government of New York City, for instance. Let's say that I'm Zoran Mamdani, and I'm going to do that Palantir contract to get to the bottom of my data. To be clear, I don't foresee this happening, but like that is a use case of Foundry, is you might have all of this data about who's going where, when, doing what.
What neighborhoods have the most bidets.
Exactly.
What neighborhoods we're going to force bidets onto everyone.
Right. And so you model that in Foundry, and then you realize that you are exclusively going to be installing bidets in Greenpoint, for instance.
They really need them.
Oh, yeah.
But so it sounds like just off the top here, it sounds like this is one of those pieces of software where it sort of is Peter Thiel was just there at the right moment. He was on the ground floor. He just sort of did it before anyone else.
Yes.
Especially because they don't really broker the data. They don't steal the data. They don't collect it.
Right.
They just created the base software for different clients to use. So I think that is a very important context. I do think it is. Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people have a tendency to get Palantir conflated with something like Cambridge Analytica, which actually was stealing data and doing it very aggressively and very illegally. Mm-hmm. Now, again, is like the CIA maybe using Palantir to model good ways that they and the NSA could steal more data? Yeah, probably.
Oh, like, for sure. I'm not always a betting person, but I would bet some money on that. Absolutely.
But there's also more concrete applications than this like big data visualization prediction shit. For instance, 404 Media recently reported on a tool that Palantir developed. It's called Elite, and ICE is using it. And they're using HHS data sets, Health and Human Services.
God, that's evil.
RFK Jr.'s Department of Health and Human Services, right?
God, that fucking sucks. That's fucking evil.
They are furnishing ICE with this data through Palantir so that ICE is then able to identify places where they would be most likely to successfully identify, detain, and deport people.
Yeah, it gets current location, address, different information. I mean, there's so much evil about this. This genuinely frustrates me to a massive degree. And that's already, that's putting aside the like, this sort of incentivizes people if they're undocumented or not here technically legally. I don't really give a shit if someone's here legally or not. But this incentivizes people to not go to doctors, to not maybe get their medications that they might need, not take care of their health.
Minneapolis has been effectively shut down for the past couple weeks because how the fuck are you going to be sending your kid to school in this environment, you know?
Yeah, this is like big government encroachment using our data to track people in the fucking streets, to hound them down. It's absurd. It's so upsetting.
And as regards Peter Thiel specifically, this creates a very, very interesting paradox, right? Because he's the fucking libertarian guy.
Or so he says.
Yeah, like small government, or like don't let the government tell you to what, and also not just that, but also that he is so afraid of the idea of interlinked reporting and like unified governments and things of that nature. In a little bit, we're going to drill down more into that, but that's just something that I wanted to mention right now so that you have it sort of at the top of mind.
I just wanted to say one last little note on Palantir before we move on. And it's like, Alex Karp, Peter Thiel, they aren't harvesting the data, but they are making these contracts intentionally, knowing what these people are going to do with them. They know what ICE is going to do with them.
Right.
They know what the CIA is going to do with this software. So, I think I just wanted to say that to be like, just because, maybe they're not the ones creating these different databases and like uses for them. They know what they're doing by partnering with these different organizations.
Well, and the reason that they're doing it is that they have to. Because here's the thing about Palantir. They only had their first profitable quarter in 2023.
Oh my God. AI moment. This is the AI company moment where, I don't think those will ever have a profitable quarter ever. But so Palantir was around for 20 years prior,
running a deficit that entire time, yes.
Oh my God.
And so this kind of points to what's really going on here, which is that this is a product that is invaluable for governments, particularly the United States government, but the United States government's patronage is also necessary in order for Palantir, the company, to survive.
It's fascinating that modern capitalism and business has sort of thrived upon the business format of we are going to run a loss for a long time. I mean, think Uber, think DoorDash, think all of these different companies. Amazon, of course. Quash the competition, gather all of like the market under their control. And then when they have that full control, they will somehow make a profit eventually. Right. And that's sort of how all modern capital functions. That's how the people at the top have gotten to where they are, is just lose a lot of fucking money somehow.
And in the case of Palantir, the reason that you're able to squeeze the US back now is that their tools have simply become too necessary. They are too invaluable for the United States government. And so now they've got the US government over a barrel, and they can do whatever they want.
It's very frustrating.
So just a couple other things about Peter Thiel's personal journey before we talk about his beliefs, right? So on the one hand, financially, he keeps founding funds. This guy cannot get enough of founding new funds.
It's like crack to him. He's a fucking addict. Got to stop this shit.
His experience with Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg inspires him to start something called the Founders Fund. And Founders Fund is exactly what it sounds like. It funds founders of tech companies.
Quick sidebar.
Yeah.
I guess it's been around for a while, the Founders Fund. But like, when did these tech people, when were they able to go away from like business? I guess I don't even know what they would be called before, but I feel like there's been so much founder propaganda in the last like 5 years. Maybe I'm just sort of seeing the tech world a little bit more just because they've become a lot more dominant on Twitter, and you see like all of like the bullshit founder tweets and Twitter users, and seeing them at all frustrates the hell out of me. And I feel like calling themselves founders is propaganda in itself to like differentiate themselves from like previous era like big business corporate overlords.
No, I think you're exactly right. It's sort of like an attempt, and Y Combinator does this as well, where like you have this thing of, oh, like we still got the hacker ethos, man. Like we're not like the other business guys who like start up a business. No, man, we're founders. We're like a special class. And I do think Founders Fund was a big piece of this, because they were founded, that fund, the Founders Fund was founded in 2005, July 2005.
I hate to say it, but I feel like it was effective propaganda somehow, because I feel like in the past, a lot of the people that were maybe more willing to shit on someone like Jeff Bezos tends to like an Elon Musk or a Peter Thiel, or probably like find themselves in the world of different founders, like, that San Francisco culture.
And I think there's something very Randian about it. And it's no real coincidence that Peter Thiel is a big fan of Ayn Rand. Oh, yeah. It's this idea of these prime movers of society, that there's a certain group of individuals who are just better than you, frankly.
Yeah, they're better. They have a lot more to say. They're a lot more interesting.
Right.
They are why the world is the way it is. Yeah.
It's so funny too, because like in high school I did speech and debate, and I know we've talked about this a little bit. And like half of the fucking kids I did forensics with, right? The other kids who were doing like extemporaneous and impromptu speaking ended up becoming dipshit founders of one sort or another. One of them ended up going to Stanford, and from there went to work at, wait for it, Palantir.
Oh God, dude, we gotta figure out something to do to this guy.
Fuck you, Peter. If you're listening to this, you're a fucking bitch.
No, I think if you work at Palantir actively, currently, still do, ever have, I think you need to consider ways to end something you should consider.
You're damn valid for that one.
Yeah. It's how I feel.
Other funds, by the way, as long as I am listing funds that Peter Thiel was responsible for, Mithril Capital, something called Valor Ventures, which Jeffrey Epstein made a $40 million investment in. I shit you not.
It always surprises people to find out that like Peter Thiel and Jeffrey Epstein met multiple times.
There was a connection
after Jeffrey Epstein was charged with criminal like child trafficking. They still hung out. Peter Thiel openly talks about it, and it drives me crazy that it's not brought up more when talking about Peter Thiel, because he knew who he was.
I'm starting to think that this Peter Thiel has a questionable sense of ethics and morality.
You know what? Yeah.
And also he starts up Thiel Capital, which again, this is probably his flagship fund, not to be confused with the previous Thiel Capital Solutions, or whatever the fuck it was called.
Was that one just sunset? Like,
yeah.
He got rid of that
yeah.
one? Okay.
And there's one last piece, which is, and you may well have heard about this, we'll cover it very briefly because it's already been talked about to death, but I think it's relevant. The Gawker controversy. Basically, Gawker.com, which you may remember, sort of the old Gawker.com, which was a very bitchy website that was regularly dishing. They published a blind item outing him as gay. And this was before, of course, Peter Thiel himself had publicly come out. And so to get his revenge, Thiel ended up bankrolling Hulk Hogan, rest in shit, in a 2013 civil lawsuit. And basically, they had published a sex tape, portions of the sex tape, without Hogan's authorization, which I want to be very clear, they should not have done.
Yeah, that was a wild move.
That was not a good idea.
The entire time I've known Peter Thiel, I've, of course, known he was gay. The revelation that he was gay came out fairly early in my political awakening. So I knew of that early on. But I just think it's really interesting that whenever I see anything about Peter Thiel or anything happens with Peter Thiel, he doesn't really go too hard on gay or trans people even. That's not really something he's ever really focused on too much as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I haven't really looked into that piece of it. I will say, though, that he
supports people that do those things, which I think is interesting.
Exactly.
And that's sort of a real piece of shit. That I think that's why it's notable, is that despite him personally not having too much of a problem, I feel like, of course, with gay people, but even trans people, the people he chooses to surround himself with do, and he is okay with that. And I think that says a lot about his character, morally speaking. And I think the other thing about the Gawker lawsuit that we can take away from in terms of his character is that he does not forgive and does not forget, right? He is more than willing to use his ample resources to punish those who have wronged him, because ultimately what ended up happening was the jury in that case, the Gawker v. Hogan case, found Gawker liable and awarded Hulk Hogan $140 million in total damages. And obviously they didn't have that money, so they had to go bankrupt. As you mentioned, Gawker gets talked about a lot, but it was sort of a turning point in a lot of the modern political world, because this is a very Trumpian move. We see Donald Trump and all of his allies use this method of punishment and not forgetting any slight against them every single day. I mean, they did that against New York Times. They did that against CBS, famously, which is now owned by the Ellisons.
Right.
This has just sort of become the open playbook because, as we've seen, if you accumulate enough money, you can just sort of win these cases because you have infinite access to lawyers and resources and media narratives.
And in the case of the Hulk Hogan thing, the cost to represent Hulk Hogan to a guy like Peter Thiel, that's fucking bupkis, right? It's a few $1 million probably, and that's nothing for him.
He makes that in 2 minutes probably.
He can just sell 0.0000001% of his Facebook stock, you know?
Yeah. No, that's nothing. And that's sort of the growing danger of a lot of this tech billionaire world as they accumulate more money and radicalize themselves to the right even further.
So we've talked about Peter Thiel's upbringing, his bio, his flop era, the way that he got out of his flop era to found the most evil company of all time. And we've talked a little bit about his personal life to the extent that we know anything about it, which is not much, honestly.
Which is, I think, very interesting. He's sort of taking the old school approach as opposed to Elon Musk's current approach, where he's sort of in the shadows.
At this point, it probably makes sense to focus in now on what he believes and why he believes it. Because this was the part of researching this episode where I really started to learn something about this guy that I genuinely had no idea about.
Same here. The underpinning of his ideology was all brand new to me. Researching the what you had me prep for this episode, I think explains a lot in a very depressing way about him.
So the first thing you need to know about Peter Thiel, and I think I alluded to this earlier briefly or mentioned it briefly, he's a Christian.
That in itself is surprising to me. For the longest time, up until today, I thought he was an atheist. I thought he was I thought he was just using the idea of the Antichrist and different religious symbolism as a tool. I didn't know he was actually a real believer.
Yeah, and I don't know to what extent he's a believer in the sense of like believing some of the mysticism about Jesus or like using it as moral framework. He doesn't actually talk very much about Christianity as a personal belief system. He instead tends to talk about it as a philosophy, which I suppose makes sense given that he, again, was a philosophy major in Stanford, and then, as is so often the case with these fucking dilettantes, he like learned one thing and was like, this is my whole personality now.
Yeah, oh God.
And his specific Christianity that he subscribes to is an apocalyptic one. He does believe that the end of the world is coming very, very soon, if it is not, in fact, already here. And he is worried that right now, we as a society, as Americans, that we've got our eye on the wrong ball because we're so worried about tech. We're so worried about the way that tech is invading our privacy and creating all of these bad social outcomes and rewiring our brains and all of that shit, right? No. That's all chill.
That's progress to him. That's progress.
That is progress. The thing that we need to be worried about, in Peter Thiel's estimation, well, it's the New World Order.
In my mind, one other existential risk is a one world totalitarian government. And I find that as least as scary as the others. And, in sort of a biblical eschatological context, you're supposed to worry about Armageddon. You're also supposed to worry about the Antichrist. Maybe you're supposed to worry more about the Antichrist because the Antichrist comes first. And so, if we're going to find a pathway through this apocalyptic age, you have to sort of navigate between the Scylla of all these, existential risks that are, and the Charybdis of the sort of political totalitarian catastrophe. But it seems to me that if we were to try to write a novel like this post 1945, it's very straightforward. It would be, it'd be like One World or None. This was a short film by the nuclear scientists after 1945. If we don't give the nuclear weapons to the one world government, it's going to blow up the whole world. And basically, the literary version would be that the Antichrist comes to power by constantly talking about Armageddon and constantly telling us scary millenarian stories. And so that's sort of my complicated, nuanced answer is there's a lot of truth to these existential risks. I don't want to completely dismiss them, but that's also
spit it out.
How we're going to get this totalitarian state. If you look at there are all these versions of this I can go down, but it's like it's do you want to worry about Dr. Strangelove or Greta
Thunberg?
It seems like Dr. Strangelove's more dangerous, but if everyone's going to have to ride a bicycle, that's not just going to happen on its own, and that requires some real enforcement of this stuff.
So what the Antichrist actually looks like, I guess, again, this is literally just taking him at his word, is Greta Thunberg coming to the U.S. and forcing us all to ride bicycles? Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
He literally is like, actually really convenient for me is that all of my ideological opponents are actual demons, like straight up biblical demons. Really convenient for me and all of my allies.
But it's also like you really, I feel like I'm starting to sound like Peter Thiel now. Like, no, really, like, what is bro on about? There's a little bit of Kendall Roy in him, by the way, I just noticed. Or maybe more accurately, there's a bit of him and Kendall Roy. But I just don't understand what he's saying. I mean, I understand what he's saying here, but I don't understand how you could be so stupid to like think this. This isn't just cracked, although it is. Yeah. It's also fucking inane.
It's super inane because it's like, what does this actually mean in the material? Because for me, as someone who does not believe in religion in a way that even close to Peter Thiel believes, this means nothing to me. The idea of an antichrist, sure, that could be used as like a useful name for, like, let's say an Adolf Hitler type person, where it's like somebody comes in and reorients the world, maybe drops a nuclear bomb, like does basically as a tool to talk about a figure, a large scale important figure, like that.
Harry Truman, also an antichrist, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm not even joking, like, because that is generally speaking in philosophy and even a lot of theology. This is what people talk about when they invoke the idea of an antichrist. This is somebody who purports to be a redeemer of some sort. Like, I'm the one who's going to change everything for the better. And then they immediately start making things measurably worse.
And that's sort of the thing, is that he is skeptical of this one world government and this one world, everything is under one giant fist ruled by one. And yeah, meanwhile, he is very in favor. In fact, he's the probably the most wealthy person alive from the surveillance industrial complex. He is. Yeah,
the imperial core. He's the guy.
He is. He's the one who has profited the most in history, probably. And so that's where it's like, for me, it's like, is he just using this as a philosophical argumentative tool, talk about Antichrist and Armageddon? I don't think he is. I do think he means this in the literal sense.
He genuinely believes this shit, because this is, again, to the point of like things that evangelical Christians specifically often tend to believe.
I mean, we just recently talked about the Seventh-day Adventists. This is the baseline ideology of Seventh-day Adventists.
And I'm assuming you have some exposure to like Left Behind, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the idea of the rapture, the idea that all of God's people are going to get yeeted up before the tribulation begins and the Antichrist shows up. I don't think that he believes in the rapture. I actually don't know. Maybe he does. The key point here is that everything that he is saying here is also reflected in very conservative evangelical Christian thought over the course of the past like century.
Yeah, no, it's just so fascinating, especially because I think the way he talks about this, I feel like in a sense, this is almost sort of an exercise of a massive ego trip. Because I think a lot of this manifests from fear. I think this whole conversation is him forcing people, well, I guess they're going there willingly, but to listen to him talk about the end of the world and why he knows correctly, why he knows how to fix it, why he and his company should have more power. Because you can't, in my mind, as I'm trying to think very logically, like basic logic. I'm trying to think. If you believe that there will be an Antichrist, and if you think there will be an Armageddon moment brought on by that Antichrist, and one of the founding things of both of those moments is that everything will come under one control, one world government, new world order. But then you sort of start doing that. To me, that seems like he is recognizing that, and he wants to be the one to be, not the Antichrist. I don't think he views himself as the Antichrist, but I think in his mind, he's like, I alone will stop the Antichrist.
Right. Yeah. He is the one who is basically taking up the sword to achieve the mission of preventing the Antichrist.
He is a very literal heroic figure in his own ethos.
Because this is also something that he actually does talk about all the time.
Yeah.
Another thing that Thiel is obsessed with and talks about regularly and has made t-shirts about, this is not a joke,
Come on,
is this concept of the catechon, which is Katechon. And the idea is it's that which withholds the Antichrist. And I think you're right. I think on some level, he sees himself as the catechon of this thing. No way is any one world government going to be able to take over so long as I, Peter Thiel, have some degree of control of and stake in companies like Palantir, which are making sure that countries like the United States and Israel remain free and independent.
Right. I think it also is a lot why, like, just looking, I think the fact that the current Trump administration is doing a lot of things that are very antagonistic to like the EU, to NATO actively with like Greenland, a lot of this is like to reorient the US against global institutions in a way that I think pleases someone like Peter Thiel, because I think he probably believes that NATO might be the Antichrist or a function of the Antichrist.
Or a potential on-ramp to the apocalypse.
Right. And I have a lot of critique of NATO, of course, but he thinks of this in a very biblical sense. And I think if he doesn't view himself as the catacon, he views people that I believe he thinks are his pawns, like Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, as the catacon. If he is not, it's his close allies.
Yeah, I think so. And the idea of like statehood more broadly, because I should also note, this is a big difference between him and the other weird guy who I had so much fun talking about on the show, Balaji Srinivasan, right? Because Balaji's whole deal, we'll recall, was the network state, where we actually exist in a stateless society from a governance perspective, and instead you opt in to sort of an elective network of statehood that pretty much just exists as a series of digital contracts, right?
You get to choose where you have to mine emeralds for your overlords. You get to choose that.
But this is very different from Thiel's idea, right? Thiel actually does support the idea of the traditional nation state because he thinks competition between nation states is necessary in order to forestall the one world government. And he sort of chalks the core of his entire worldview up to René Girard. He was the guy who he became most obsessed with when he was in college. And Girard is a French theorist whose sort of signature contribution to the field of philosophy was the idea of mimetic theory. So in broad strokes, and to be very clear, I'm not a philosopher, and don't at me.
We both read a really great Wired article that I highly recommend you read if you're listening to this episode. And so we're experts, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we are not experts on René Girard. We are experts on this article that we read. But basically, the idea of mimetic theory is that we all have a tendency to reflect people and their actions based on what we see and what we admire. And what ends up happening over time is that by you mirroring the behavior and patterns of the people that you see around you, you end up becoming more similar to them over time.
Great example of that being is everyone just sort of talks like Donald Trump now. Everyone sort of has that sort of syntax way of speaking.
But the other thing that happens as a result of this, Girard posits, is that with time, when you start to look in the mirror more and more and more, you find things that upset you about yourself. And so what you then need to do is take those emotions, those feelings, those thoughts, and displace them. And he posits that the way that people do this is through scapegoating. And so you say, hey, that person or that group of people, they have all of the qualities that I hate. Fuck those people. And so a lot of people who also buy into mimetic theory, they will then take a look at like the Holocaust, right? And that's an example of an entire nation taking all of their own worries, fears, anxieties, and hatreds, displacing them onto Jewish people, and then eventually, coming up with the final solution because of the belief for them that that would purify them and rid them of those things that they cannot stand to witness in themselves.
Very similar situation right now in modern society where we just have to get rid of every single illegal immigrant or maybe even all non-white people. And the USA's problems will be completely solved.
Right, because the alternative is to look at these other people and realize that they are people as much as you are, and that the things that you see in the people who you do associate with that you don't like, you have those same qualities in yourself.
And this is sort of the really frustrating thing about this, because I think this theory is very obviously true. Like these concepts of mimetic theory and scapegoating, we see this throughout all of history. We see it happening right now. So for me, when I read something like this, when I read something like this from René Girard, I'm like, oh my God, like this is sort of a cautionary tale, right? This is a cautionary philosophy. But Peter Thiel, this is sort of his founding philosophy, a founder, if you will, of this sort of philosophy. And
was René Girard
the first founder? Yeah. New debate.
The most heated thread in the history of the forums closed after 12,000 pages. Yeah.
Sadly, yes. And that's sort of the really frustrating thing is supposedly Peter Thiel is a student of his, a very personal student of his.
Right.
But he uses this for evil. He takes this theory for evil.
That's because we need to now bring another guy into the fold here, which is a man named Carl Schmitt. And Schmitt was an authoritarian conservative political theorist and also a noted Nazi. A lot of his ideas were, he was on board with the German Nazi Party very early on, and a lot of his ideas and philosophies were used in the construction of the Third Reich. Like, he was given multiple opportunities to be like, hey man, do you renounce Nazism? And he said, nope, I love it.
Oh, so he was a Nazi till his death?
Yes. And even ended up going to Spain, Francoist Spain, to be like, yeah, no, the great work continues, and you guys are doing great. Way to go, Francisco Franco. Yeah. But Carl Schmitt, is a man that Peter Thiel is very interested in. And this is where we connect the dot back to Peter Thiel's upbringing.
Oh, God.
Because when he was a kid, he was going to a fascist school in German Southwest Africa.
Oh, God. It's all connected. It's all fucking
And
connected.
obviously he was really fucking young at the time,
so
right?
He was actually literally, but still, if you're taught at the age of whatever he was, like 9.
Oh, yeah.
By literal Nazis.
Yes.
In a Nazi-controlled state. Maybe not controlled actively, but a Nazi school. That's sort of what the Hitler Youth was, right? It was the ideology of teach them young.
And I'm sure, I am certain that he was on some Hitler-Jungen bullshit too, because
for sure,
if you read stories about what this place was like at this time, they were still sort of like the last vestiges holding out for the pure Aryan German state.
Just because the Nazis fell in the 40s doesn't mean that all the Nazis disappeared. That doesn't mean, obviously we live in a very, what I would call in the United States right now, a very, very close to a Nazi-like fascist state.
Absolutely.
Currently.
Well, I don't need to presumably tell anybody who listens to the show to Google Operation Paperclip, but in case you haven't, do it, Anyway.
Foundational, yeah.
Carl Schmitt actually thought, and this is on the record, he thought the Reich was the only thing that could stop, and this is a direct quote, the satanic unification of the world.
Oh.
And again, unification of the world, right?
New World Order.
Interesting stuff. I have a quote here, and this is from the article that we've been talking a little bit about already, which a lot of the research that I pulled for this chunk came from this article. This is an article called The Real Stakes and Real Story of Peter Thiel's Antichrist Obsession by Laura Bullard, and this was published in Wired in September of 2025. In Schmitt's post-war book, The Nomos of the Earth, he pitched a new kind of catacon. And again, catacon, this is the idea of sort of the backstop, the thing that keeps the Antichrist from taking power. This would be a world order based on the equilibrium of several independent large blocks, as Palaver summarized it in 1996. In Schmitt's multipolar world order, each hegemonic power would have its own distinct culture, race, language, and national heritage. The world would be disunified by design. There would be no global regulatory bodies and no global enforcement mechanisms. No United Nations, no International Criminal Court.
Interesting.
Yeah. Funny that this guy would want to evade the ICC. I wonder why.
I wonder what happened around that time that might inform that.
I wonder why the ICC was founded.
And that is before, we'll continue more of this article. They might even mention it in this next piece that I'm about to read. But I do think it is an ironic twist of fate that the people who were sort of fearing the one world's government and new world order sort of failed with Nazi Germany, and then NATO was founded, and then the ICC was founded. Right. I think that is genuinely funny, and also some degree.
NATO, another organization chock full of Nazis. It is the thing about Nazism, and we are seeing this right the fuck now, is that if you don't stamp it out, if you don't stamp out fascism, if you don't stamp out authoritarianism, it's always going to come back. It's like a weed. You have to kill it at the root.
In July of 2019, Thiel went on stage to present a keynote lecture at the inaugural U.S. conference of a new international political force, the National Conservatism Movement.
I will say, by the way, so fucking funny to be like, we're not National Socialists. We're national Conservatives.
Yeah. That'll fool them. They'll never see that one coming.
The name's raising a lot of questions that are already answered by the shirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it is interesting that they're sort of just admitting it on some level. I mean, that is the world that we live in right now is a very nationalistic, in the United States, a very nationalistic movement. We see that, I mean, of course, in a lot of ally to Trump countries like Argentina as well. We see it all over the place in the right-wing movements right now. Established that year by the Israeli political theorist Yoram Hazony, speaking of Israel, national conservatives are opposed to universalist ideologies and want to see a world of independent nations, each pursuing its own national interests and upholding national traditions that are its own as the only genuine alternative.
Thiel has presented a lecture at all but 2 U.S.-based conferences of the National Conservatives.
God.
Sorry, I can't get over that.
We're
not Nazis, we're Nachos. No, it's German for the Bart the, right? Come on, man.
Yeah.
Where illiberal world leaders meet with their international counterparts and where right-leaning intellectuals from across the globe gather to give talks on the failures of liberalism, the necessity of reevaluating the separation of church and state, and the virtues of closed borders and self-interested, soil-deep nationalism.
Soil.
You might say blood and that, potentially. In 2021, Thiel was listed among the conference's biggest donors of $50,000 or more.
I think just from that, we can pretty safely assume a lot about Peter Thiel's politics.
Yeah.
I think if he was alive in 1940, he would have been a Nazi.
Yep.
I think he's alive right now and he is a Naco. Understanding this, seeing this is where a lot of the money went, where a lot of the tech people went, where a lot of current allies to Peter Thiel, to Donald Trump, it so absolutely explains why we live in the world that we do.
Yes.
I mean, this was being sort of pushed and funded and talked about pretty openly for the last 6 or 7 years. Of course, that was like during and after Donald Trump's first term when we already knew what was to come. Mm-hmm. But this didn't just come out of nowhere. I think a lot of people, I don't think anyone that listens to the show necessarily or us, I think a lot of general liberals were stunned that Donald Trump could win again in 2024. And it's like, well, they were fucking building this very intentional, ideologically driven a movement of nationalists. Of course they had all this like power and like institutional power underneath them.
The other big thing about Thiel's like whole deal, other than all the aforementioned shit, is that he is so afraid of dying. And you might think that a Christian would be like, well, when I die, I'm going to go into God's heavenly arms, right? No, no. This guy is fucking terrified of death.
It's interesting. He never seems, whenever he talks about religion, does not talk about that aspect of religion. He just talks about it. He read Revelations and that's all that exists. Right. The end of the world is the only thing that exists to him. And not just his life, just like the world. And that's where I keep going back and forth on him using his religiousness as a tool or a true belief. I don't for sure know.
And I should also say, you know, up until this point, you might be wondering, okay, get to the shit about the babies, right? I'm not listening to Ill-Conceived to hear about fucking Rene Girard. I want to hear about natalism. Well, I've got great news for you because
here it is.
This is where his ideology then very clearly begins to influence what it is that he does outside of the world of business, right? And even inside of the world of business in terms of the sorts of things that he funds. Because as a guy who is very afraid of death, he is also very interested in seeing the population continue to grow, as well as extending his own life. Mm-hmm. We all, of course, will remember the whole thing about the blood boy and all that. Which I don't remember if that was actually confirmed or not, or if that was just rumored with Thiel.
Peter Thiel, I don't know if we know if he has a blood boy.
You're right. It's Brian Johnson who's got the blood boy, yeah.
The blood boy family is Brian Johnson.
Although, again, PayPal Mafia, it's very easy to get these people confused with each other, and they all have the same fucking obsessions.
They do. They're all obsessed with living forever. They're all obsessed with like Nazism and like far right politics. They're all obsessed with surveillance, and also grow like having the largest families ever, but not Peter Thiel, interestingly.
Well, he's gay, right? So the only way that he could have kids, if he wanted, would be to get a donor and a surrogate, or just do it the old-fashioned way, I guess, with a woman who he has no connection to, right?
Even though he that would have to be the case for him, he's still oddly fascinated with this topic.
Absolutely.
Of like the birth rate and natalism.
And that's what I guess we should get to here, because why is it that he is so interested in this? Well, the first thing is that this idea of Western culture, which we sort of come back to time and time again, it's a favorite topic of these perverts. He sees it as the necessary bulwark against creeping globalization, right? Mm-hmm. And again, as we have said on this show many times, if your main priority is making sure that Western civilization continues to stay a formidable force, you then also need to make sure that there's going to be a population supply for that civilization. And to be very clear, when I say Western civilization, in this case, I mean white people.
And he absolutely means white people. He
also means white people.
Whenever he and a lot of these allies say Western, they mean white. When they say globalization, they mean not white.
Yeah, or Jews sometimes, depending.
Yeah.
But I am going to go ahead and play a clip for you here, June, where he's talking a little bit about his concern with birth rates. And this is on a little podcast called The Joe Rogan Show.
Friend of the show.
Yeah, one of the Japanese demographers I was looking at on this a few years ago. His thesis was, no, once it flips, it doesn't flip back because you've changed all the politics to where people get disincented. And then you should just extrapolate this as the permanent birth rate. And if it's one on average of one baby per woman, and you have a halving, and then it's in 33 generations, 2 to the 33rd is about 8 billion. And if every generation is 30 years, 30 times 33 is 990 years. In 990 years, you'd predict there'd be one person left on the planet.
Jesus Christ.
And then you go extinct if there's only one person left. That doesn't work.
Oh, my God.
That's so funny.
It's so
I'll
funny.
never get over, just like you could add Joe Rogan going, oh my God, to the background of like anything. It'll have the same effect in my mind. It'll just fucking crack me up.
Maybe I should just put it on the soundboard so that every so often I can just play one of Joe Rogan and be like, man, that's crazy.
The Joe Rogan jump scare, official new a terrorizing moment in the show is
potentially
where once per episode you hear Joe Rogan go, oh my God.
Call me Elon Musk the way I be looking into it. But like, I have some thoughts about this clip, June. But do you have any first thoughts? I'm happy to take it otherwise.
I mean, immediately, the way that he talks about, like, oh, there's going to be, eventually it's going to get so bad, there's going to be one human. I mean, it's like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk all talk about this doomsday scenario where people are pandas all of a sudden now and just like can't fuck. Right. And it's so odd to me that they all buy into this as like the underpinning of why they are fascists.
Well, that's the fucking declining sperm count or whatever, right? Like
declining sperm count. It's like the declining whiteness. He uses Japan as an example here, of course, because they're probably the most well-known example of a population that is declining. This really scares. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to say it really scares him because I don't think it really does. I think he is using this as like a scapegoat. In the Renaud, what's his fucking name? Renaud Girard.
In a Girardian sense, yes.
Yeah, I think he is using this as a scapegoat.
What is it about this group of people that they are seeking to denigrate?
I think as it's like a fear thing, you know, like with the way he talks about Western culture.
Sure.
So he is saying like, oh, we have to, Western culture is it's the necessity to ensure the future.
And you're right, because the scapegoat is like, it's got to be something that's adjacent to you, but different. And so then you can point at Japan or Taiwan or whatever and be like, look, they fucked up. They fucking blew it. But
now they're losing their culture.
But the thing is, you know, they had enough in common with us in a way, but like they fucking did it wrong. Let's not fucking be like them.
And that's sort of the thing is I feel like a lot of right wingers, nakos, if you will, I think a lot of them view Japan, South Korea, not white, but Western, even though they're not.
They're Western adjacent, but it's still different enough that you can point at it. Because obviously it's literally not Western. It's the East.
Yeah.
It's as far east as you can go, pretty much.
And that's sort of the funny thing about about that is that it, like in a literal sense, it's not at all.
But yes, you're talking about like proximity to the idea of the West in a socio-political sense, and you're exactly right that like with the post-war realignment, both after World War II and of course the Korean War, that both Japan and South Korea are essentially United States client states. Here's the other thing too. It's like, obviously it's facile to be like, well, geez, it's just going to be, we're all going to be gone in 930 years. But also, you're not going to be around in 930 years, you know? Like,
yeah.
Come on, man. Like,
it's so goofy. All of this fear is so goofy. And it's like, you know, I worry about the climate and like, you know, that's something that I think is legitimate. And I think on a certain level, thinking about like, you know, we've talked about before, where it's like there is probably a level of worry about a declining population that like on a logistical sense in terms of like cities, like if Chicago lost 1 million people, we would not have the money to fund the infrastructure on the same like level. You know, there is like a logistical issue in certain regards, but this is like a moral decay. Like the way that they talk about this is like a moral.
It's not even moral decay. It's annihilation, right?
Annihilationism,
it is the absolute destruction of humanity. And that's just not real. I'm sorry, but it's just not. And because
it's hokey nonsense, yeah.
Because you also can't assume that because the birth rate has gone down, it's going to stay down forever. If you look at the fertility rate in the United States in the 80s, it was right about where it is right now.
Exactly, because it's like no one would have predicted like the baby boom. That was an unpredictable thing that happened. You can't just know for sure that the future will happen as it's currently going. And maybe this is an attempt of him to sort of engineer a like, you know, an alternative, a different path from that. And I think that is what he's doing. I think that is why he talks about this. But it's crazy to say like, oh yeah, 930 years will be doomed. But it's like, what if there's a baby boom next year? Like, who fucking knows, man?
Who knows?
Like, I think it depends.
Maybe
I think
tomorrow,
this all depends.
Maybe tomorrow we solve climate change. Yeah. And I mean, we won't. But like, you know, for the sake of argument, let's say that tomorrow we solve climate change. And all of a sudden, we've fucking fixed it.
Maybe Donald Trump dies right now. And all of a sudden, there's a lot of babies born in the month of October. Like, that could just be, you know?
Never thought about it that way.
Yeah. But no, it's like you can't predict the future. He is trying to predict a future that is unknowable.
And that's not to say that you can't use data to analyze possible outcomes. But the thing about Thiel specifically, and this makes sense given the whole thing with Palantir, is that he thinks he can predict the future because that's what Palantir's whole pitch is.
Absolutely. He really buys into it on a base level. I think he orients all of his world based on that assumption.
And I think to the point of Palantir, right? Mm-hmm. We need to understand it as the flagship of his project. It is not just incidental to the project, it is the project. Because the future of the planet is dependent on these discrete competing nation states, right? And if the West is to remain at the top of the food chain, the West must then fight to continue to preserve that claim, and that's what Palantir is for. That's why Palantir exists, is to guarantee the continued future supremacy of the West, such as it is.
I think for a lot of the tech natalists, a lot of them do talk about the birth rate, do care about the project of natalism. But I think it's hard to decouple that with their fear of actual personal death. Yeah. I think that is what drives a lot of the specifically tech natalists. I think a lot of in the previous episodes, the religious natalists it's not really a thing that comes up is their own death, their own mortality, their like legacy. That's sort of an inconsequential aspect of what they do. Because
they know that they're going to heaven, right? Like that they in many cases have that blessed assurance. They have that foretaste of glory divine, to quote the hymn. And so they're okay with it.
They are. And someone like Peter Thiel is not. And I think to understand the current nationalist movement that we're seeing is I feel like you have to conceive of it as a political ideology based upon fear. The way that people like J.D. Vance, I think it's important to note that J.D. Vance is where he is because of Peter Thiel. J.D. Vance is a project of Peter Thiel. He is the vice president because of Peter Thiel. It's not just a coincidence, you know. His rise was manufactured by him. And that's why J.D. Vance believes pretty much all the same things that Peter Thiel seems to.
Because to the point of concerns about birth rates and fertility, there are definitely a number of explicitly natalist pieces, we'll say explicitly natalist arrows in Peter Thiel's quiver. He's got a quiver full of them, you might even say.
Yeah.
Most notably, this is not a large investment, but I think it's a telling investment. In September 2022, Evie magazine, which you might remember them from our Tradwife episode. It's like the Tradwife magazine.
I'm familiar. Yeah. It's a fascinatingly odd news website.
Yeah, it's like Cosmo for tradwives is the best way that I can put it, right?
Yeah.
And in September 2022, they announced an app called 28. That's the name of the app. I don't know why it's called 28. Maybe there's a place on their website where it says why it's called 28.
So wait, Evie magazine? This is their app?
This is their app. Yes.
Oh, what?
And Thiel Capital, which is, again, his sort of big fund that he uses for projects around town, provided the seed funding for this app.
That's fucking crazy. Is this the one? Is this the app? Because I remember years ago, this was 2022, people made a lot of hay out of the fact that there was a period tracking app being released that tracks all of your data and like goes into a massive database, and to not trust it. Is this that same one? Do you know if that's the same one that this is?
I think it probably is.
That's fucking crazy. I would have never fucking guessed that was a Peter Thiel venture. That's fucking insane. And especially that it's associated with, and of course I'm not too surprised that it's like a far right women's thing, but that it's a women's magazine, a Tradwife magazine associated app. I would have assumed it was just like some random tech startup rather than like a magazine.
I mean, I think that the reason that it was done with the magazine is that they already had established a brand, and so they had a certain built-in customer base that they could easily sell to.
They're like ambassadors.
Yeah. Like if you go on the App Store, like right now, and you look up Evie, or not Evie, and if you look up 28, it has like, I want to say tens of thousands of reviews. Like or ratings at least. Go ahead and look it up real quick and you'll see.
Over 5,000 reviews. It is 28th in wellness.
Yeah.
So random people will just stumble upon this.
It's on Android too. And the way that they pitch it is really interesting because what they say is, and this is straight from the website, today, millions of women are saying goodbye to hormonal birth control and discovering their cycle, often for the first time. For years, many of us were in the dark about our own bodies, unaware of how our cycle truly works, or how our hormones impact everything from our skin, weight, mental health, and menstruation. That should be from our skin, weight, mental health to menstruation, and mental health to whatever. They didn't copy edit it. Some call this moment an awakening. Some call it a revolution. We like to think of it as a movement to lead ourselves and others toward happier, healthier lives. More than anything, it's a call to reclaim control of our bodies in the most natural way possible. So up front, noticing already, it's pretty hard to not notice it. This is like the woman thing, right? This is an app that's just for us girls. And what they are really doing here is they're saying, don't use hormonal birth control. Don't use IUDs.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, explicit in the advice that they are giving here. The idea is you want to be raw dogging your period every time. And then this app gives you tools to track that period, as well as exercises that are suggested alongside different points of your period, which is completely pseudoscientific. But there's this idea that like, yeah, when you're 2 days in, you need to do sun salutations because that's good for your pussy. I don't know. Like,
yeah, I mean, if it's not to make it more clear, even magazine themselves, their position generally, I don't think they speak as an institution because there's different commentators, but their general position usually comes down to question the birth control pill, question it. There needs to be, doctors need to look back into it. There needs to be questions about this medication. So that is their stance. That is what you should assume this app's stance absolutely is.
Because this is a situation where this kind of calls back to our Quiverful episode. they are very skeptical of the mere idea of birth control, because they, in some cases, on the religious side, they see it as fucking with God's plan, straight up.
Yes.
And there are even more extreme people than this who will be like, don't even do any sort of period tracking or natural family planning of any sort whatsoever. You need to be raw dogging that shit every night to make sure that a baby's in there as soon as possible.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, it's very interesting that this is the type of person that Peter Thiel wants to ally with, fund their app, to associate with. I mean, it's very telling. This is one of those things where it's like, how the hell do we keep coming across the same fucking people every single time we do an episode? And it's like, oh my God, there's this person that we talked about before. I didn't even know that this other person and them was associated. It always fucking happens, man.
You ready for one more? But as long as we're at it, as long as we're connecting the dots.
I'm nervous. I'm fucking shaking in my fucking socks.
You know, Peter Thiel, one of the things that he does, if this is not fucking clear already, is that he will establish organizations and, you know, circles and fucking salons for similar-minded people to get together. Like, as an example, one of the things that he funds is something called the Thiel Fellowship, where if you either skip or drop out of college, he will give you $200,000. Straight up.
He clearly has a very doomer approach to college, especially because his origin story, his flop era, was he sort of went to college for a long fucking time. He excelled in school.
At least 7 years, right? That's how long to take your undergrad plus your JD. Entered his flop era immediately, and he's like, I will prevent other bright kids who are like me from doing what I did.
And then I'm going to make them go into evil companies.
Exactly.
Like A16Z or my own company Palantir, to sort of surveil everyone and watch everyone and know everyone's location at all times. And it's like, that is the thing he valued. That's a deep value of his, is he does not like school. He does not like traditional institutions.
If you go on the Thiel Fellowship website, there's actually an entire list of companies that are connected to the Thiel Fellowship that are hiring right now.
Oh, God. I mean, I think it should be very clear at this point that in the political, the true definition of politics, he is an illiberal. Conservatism, traditionally in the United States and in like the modern era, conservatism is a branch of a liberalist ideology.
Liberal
like
in the
liberalism.
sense that everybody has these rights, in that we primarily derive our own freedoms from those rights, which are guaranteed to us by the state. Exactly.
And the event he funds and has spoken at, the National Conservatism event, is explicitly illiberal. And I think he very clearly acts in that way across his different ventures.
And those ventures, I agree, are all with the intention of moving people away from a liberal understanding of the world and toward a centralized authoritarian one where these great powers compete, and that's what the world is.
And that's sort of the current Donald Trump administration.
Yeah.
You can look at so many different parts of the last just a fucking year. It's been a fucking year. And it's like, oh, that is explicitly illiberal in the political ideological sense.
And I had been teasing up another connection, and now I want to go back to that a second.
Ooh, yeah.
One of the other organizations that Peter Thiel founded is basically his own version of Bilderberg, which, by the way, he's also a member of the Bilderberg group.
Come on.
But he also has his own little org. It's called Dialogue. And you know who was comms director for Dialogue for a while?
Can I take a guess?
Yes.
Adolf Hitler.
No. Somebody.
I'll take a real
friend
guess. Sorry,
of
I'll
the
take
show.
Oh no. Okay. The Collins, those with the glasses.
Simone.
Is it Simone Collins? Oh God, of course. Sorry, I just deflated halfway through my scream because it's like a fucking chorus, man.
And so this is the thing, right?
How is she the fucking? Sorry, I'm just realizing that they are fucking everywhere.
All of this shit that we are talking about on this show is downstream of the ideas and money of these incredibly powerful, wealthy people.
I just am always overcome with the sadness that I feel like not just us, but the royal we realize this a little too late sometimes, because the infrastructure is all there. They have made these moves. They have established this parallel ecosystem. They've done all these things, and now we're just sort of archaeologists digging through, not even archaeologists, we're watching it happen right now, and we're sort of going back and peeling back the curtain. And it's like, I think that's an important thing to do, especially to eventually move to counter it. But Jesus Christ, it's absurd that they were able to do this.
But also, this isn't over, and that's the other thing that I'll say. Like, yes, a lot of what we are talking about are things that have already happened. They are organizations that have already existed, but that does not guarantee that they will continue to be this way. It's just that when you have that kind of money, you can always be focusing on your next move. And when we're talking about the things that Peter Thiel is putting like real money into, because I think that the 28 app was like $2 million or something like that, which again,
that's cheap.
That's not real money for a guy like Peter Thiel. But
that's nothing. That's nothing.
But in June 2023, he did join a round that the total value of the round was $200 million, led by a fund called Recharge Capital. And basically, this was an investment vehicle that would provide startup capital and ongoing support for women's health and fertility care companies, specifically in Southeast Asia, Latin America, Europe, the Middle East. Similar situation in May 2024, I found an announcement where he, through Thiel Capital, led a $10 million venture round for a company called RHEA, R-H-E-A. This is another private healthcare company. They maintain a network of fertility clinics in places including Singapore, Thailand, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Los Angeles. And again, the long-term goal here is to keep building this shit out so that this brand is synonymous with the idea of women's care, reproductive care, and whether you're talking about anything from just traditional, checking in on a baby through to IVF and other more cutting edge tech, Thiel has a vested interest in seeing that happen. And they also sell multivitamins.
Of course they do.
Because the scam never stops. The fucking grift never stops with these people.
So it sounds like, it's mostly not operating within the United States, but I wouldn't be surprised if eventually that were the case. It sounds like they are sort of trying to be a countervailing force to something, say, like Planned Parenthood.
I think so.
In the United States. Yeah, I think so too.
Not countervailing in the sense of like they're going to try to keep people from having abortions, but I think that
I was going to ask, do we know if that's the case?
I don't know. I don't believe so. I think that It really is. What it really is, and this is something we could do a whole episode about actually, is that one of the big emerging industries in reproductive care is in medical tourism, because you can start up these clinics in places like Thailand, and then people might actually come from other countries in the area to get care there because it is more readily accessible and or way cheaper than what they're able to get back wherever their home country is. And so you might get wealthy people, like really wealthy people, flying from fucking, I don't know, Germany or whatever, or the United States of America, maybe.
Yeah. No, I think there is a lot to talk about there. Not right now, of course, but I think, we see that with network states too. A lot of these network states operate to do very experimental operations that don't pass regulatory tests in countries like the United States,
But the big difference here, and I think that this is an important point of comparison as long as we're going back and talking for a second about like network states and Balaji's whole thing, is that they aren't really real. Like they exist mostly.
There's like two real ones.
Exactly. And even those, they're not real, like legally they exist. And I guess physically they sort of exist, but they're not real. Whereas everything that Peter Thiel is doing is extremely real. It is extremely tangible and is changing the world in very noticeable and immediate ways.
And that's sort of why at the top I was like, this is like the most powerful, most evil man. And maybe that's playing into what he wants. Maybe me assigning him as someone's catechon or with that power is playing exactly into what he wants. But I think it's impossible to look at all of this, to look at the world we live in, see everything he's been involved with, everything he provides as a service, and not sort of think he is maybe one of the most influential people in the world right now, even above Donald Trump in a sense.
In a sense. I think our boy Donnie still gets it at the end of the day, just because he does have the nuclear codes,
Yeah.
But you're exactly right that, again, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, would not be where he is were it not for Peter Thiel. And Vance clearly has his eyes on the presidency. You know?
He does. Long play. This is a long fucking play
and then
J.D. Vance, by Peter Thiel.
I keep thinking about this too, like, sure, a world in which it finally happens and we all get to go out and celebrate. The very next thing that happens is J.D. Vance gets sworn in. And I don't see him being a particularly good or particularly effective president. But then the question comes down to effective for whom? And ultimately, I think that if you're somebody like Peter Thiel, having an ideologue like J.D. Vance in office, even if he's not very effective, gives you carte blanche to do what the fuck it is that you want to do. Because everything that is necessary in order for you to accomplish what it is that you want to do will be furnished for you. Or at bare minimum, the things that you maybe ought not be doing will be overlooked. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Grim. It's grim.
Yeah, it tends to be, but this one in particular, it's like this was an episode I was looking forward to doing a lot just because I find Peter Thiel fascinating. I really want to, on our next bonus episode about this episode, the B-sides for this one, if you want to, if you think you have more to say, I would love to talk more about the Rene Girard, like, underpinning ideology of him, because I find it so fascinating. I find that is he like fucking diverts it for evil in a way that just frustrates me to a degree that I want to talk about that more.
We can do that, and I can also read you some pages of his shitty book. How does that sound?
That sounds perfect. Yeah.
Because I guess that's the thing that I wanted to close on, right? Is, does this guy have an unfathomable amount of money? Yes. Does he have access to most of the levers of power in this country? Also, yes. However, he's a fucking dilettante. He's a moron, and I could easily defeat him in the marketplace of ideas. And that might be small consolation, but it's the thing that I'm hanging on to, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm on your side.
And
I think you could easily trounce him.
And now, you, dear listener, can do the same. So thanks for listening to another week of Ill Conceived. Again, if you want access to those B-sides, patreon.com/illconceived is where you want to go for that. And we'll see you next week.
See ya.